You know the feeling. You're navigating the constant hum of a typical day, and suddenly you're in the middle of a massive argument with your partner. A single comment hits, your chest tightens, and you react with intense anger or completely shut down. Minutes later, you have no idea why it escalated so fast. Back in 1985, the Rocky Mountain News ran a questionnaire to decode this exact response. Look at these three statements on the screen. Are you A, totally comfortable depending on others? B, constantly worrying your partner doesn't really love you? Or C, just uncomfortable getting close to anyone? Take a second and lock in your answer. This diagram shows how a full 40% of the population splits off into those last two categories. They fall into either the anxious or avoidant groups, frequently getting locked into a deeply frustrating push-and-pull relationship dynamic. These behaviors are predictable biological scripts running in response to perceived threats. They represent brilliant adaptations designed to secure care in a specific early environment. To understand why our brains run these specific scripts, we have to look back to the 1930s. At the time, the prevailing medical wisdom was that infants really only needed food and basic physical shelter to thrive. Psychologist John Bowlby's work challenged that assumption entirely. These experiments observed baby monkeys raised with two different artificial mothers. The young primates consistently chose a soft, cloth-covered mother that offered comfort over a cold wire mother that actually dispensed food. We are wired to prioritize emotional safety over physical sustenance. That finding gained terrible real-world validation in the 1950s. Hospitals rigidly restricted parents to visiting sick toddlers for just 1 hour a week. The resulting isolation traumatized the children so visibly that it forced medical institutions to rewrite their rigid rules, officially recognizing early emotional attachment as a strict biological necessity. Which brings us to Bowlby's core thesis. All behavior makes sense in context. Your adult insecure traits were once childhood strategies. They were designed to extract the best possible care from your specific early environment. These early environments create lifelong emotional roadmaps. A child who receives consistent, reliable care typically develops a secure attachment style, growing into an adult who maintains a healthy, stable balance of intimacy and independence. This flowchart traces the alternative paths. Notice how a child experiencing inconsistent care learns to turn up the volume on their emotions just to get noticed. Fast forward, and they become a hyper-vigilant adult, heavily dependent on their partner for validation to feel safe. Now look what happens if a parent is deeply uncomfortable with emotions. The child learns to minimize their own needs. They grow up into an emotionally distant adult who shoves their feelings down and reacts to rejection by pulling far away. There is also a fourth, less common path known as disorganized attachment. This creates a rigid, chaotic dynamic where an adult simultaneously craves closeness but feels completely terrified of it. Psychologist Susan Johnson maps out exactly what happens when these opposite styles collide in romance. She identifies the anxious partner as the pursuer and the avoidant partner as the withdrawer. Here is the visual representation of that collision. The pursuer is terrified of abandonment, so they demand closeness to feel secure. But that approach instantly triggers the withdrawer, who requires physical and emotional distance to feel safe. The harder one pushes for connection, the further the other retreats into their cave. Beneath these better arguments lies a shared longing for connection, currently sabotaged by incompatible survival strategies. You cannot just talk your way out of this dynamic during a fight. When a threat pops up, fear hijacks your primitive brain, sending you straight into a fight-or-flight response. Your body chemistry shifts entirely, making logical learning and communication physically impossible. To shift toward secure attachment, the anxious partner has to relocate power back into themselves. You must practice regulating your own nervous system, whether that's through grounding exercises or self-talk, instead of continuously outsourcing that job to your partner. If you lean avoidant, your job is to recognize when you automatically check out. Acknowledge that the withdrawal is just an old protective shield, and do the scary thing. Calmly extend reassurance to your partner, even while asking for the space you need. There is one crucial shared tool to make this happen. When you get triggered, you have to physically slow down. Taking a deliberate, deep out-breath physically forces your heart rate to drop. Lowering that heart rate interrupts the adrenaline spike, creating a window of time. In this calm pause, replace panic with curiosity about your feelings. Understanding your biological programming provides the map for this work. By manually regulating your system, you create the safety required to move past childhood defenses and engage with the vulnerability that intimacy requires.